Wow.
It's so insane to see yourself growing up. I think Terry Sylvester had my white suit, by the way. It's the one I'm trying to get Crosby to wear. A lot of music, eh? Is Allan Clarke one of the greatest lead singers ever? I'm serious. I mean it.
Thank you. Thank you. I tried.
Not a bad harmonica player either.
Yeah, right.
Well, I want to thank you all for being here. This is a great movie, and I know that David Peck put a lot into it. I'm James Austin. I'm going to be here as a moderator, and I'd like to thank you all for coming here tonight. It's a very special occasion. And I'd like to also welcome Allan Clarke and Graham Nash here on the stage to talk about the music and what they've contributed. And also, over on my far left is Mr. Rob Bowman, Grammy Award-winning professor of music at York University, Toronto, and one of the film producers, and also conducted the interviews for the film. And over here, next to Allan, is the Grammy-nominated David Peck of Reelin in the Years production, which to my knowledge has the largest library of film footage in the known world. And he has put together a marvelous film, and he has continued to do that. And everybody should see the Ray Charles film that David and I worked on, because it's really, really amazing. David is the director and co-producer of this documentary, and thanks to him and his team for making this film on the Hollies, and thanks to the Hollies who inspired this wonderful film. I'm going to try to fill in maybe some missing blanks that weren't in the actual film itself. So let's go over to Allan, and please tell us a little bit about the first time you met the Everly Brothers.
Oh, dear. I think that the first time that we met them was in Manchester. We found out they were playing at I think it was the Odeon.
Free Trade Hall.
Free Trade Hall, that was it. Yeah, I knew it was the Free Trade Hall. And we went, and they were just great. And we said to each other, we've got to go and try and meet these guys. And what happened was the guys came out of the back entrance, and they started running. And we ran after them. And we chased them all the way to the hotel. And we got them. And it was the greatest day of our lives, because they were the Everly Brothers. They were gods, and they're still gods to me. Every time that I meet Phil, I still shake. I still get that trembling in my knees, because that guy, well, both those guys meant so much to me and Graham. And they pointed us in the right direction to go for what we did later on.
They did a little more than that. They actually validated the fact that we were human beings. They came, I mean, it was, after midnight, Allan and I had missed the last bus home, and we knew we had a 9-mile walk home, and we didn't give a shit. They came around the corner, we were standing there, and instead of just like, signing an autograph and patting us on the head and walking off, they actually stood and talked to me and Allan as people. It was me and Allan and Don and Phil on the steps of the Midland Hotel in Manchester. I mean, it changed our lives. I really began to realize how important it is when you meet someone to make eye contact and to make them feel as if they're there and that you're listening to them. It changed my life. So they did a little more than what Allan says.
And then about 6 years later, Graham, you got to work with Don and Phil on Two Yanks in England. How was that?
Actually, both of us did. We were playing the London Palladium with Pete Seeger, actually, topping the bill. And the phone rings backstage, and Rod Shields, our road manager, said, yeah, he's here. Graham, it's Phil Everly. I said, you're fucking with me, right? Phil Everly. He goes, no, it's Phil Everly. So I pick up the phone. I go, hey, Phil. They were in town. They wanted to do a record in England. They wanted to know if the Hollies had any songs. And at that time, we had about a dozen or 15 songs. So we went over to the Ritz Hotel in London and sang these songs for the Everly Brothers. And we ended up making this record with them. And Elton was on that record. And Jimmy Page was on that record.
Guys, yeah. A few other guys.
And they did about 6 of our songs.
I remember actually being in the singing booth with Phil Everly, and we were going through one of the songs, and he turned to me and he said, "Hey Al, how do you sing that line?" I went, "Oh God, no!" Phil Everly's asking me to tell him how to sing. It was magic. It was really magic, and you know, the album should have been bigger than it was because they did so much justice to the songs that we wrote. They were absolutely fabulous, and it passed people by. Go out and buy Two Yanks in England. It's a fabulous album.
Absolutely.
Do it. Yeah.
David Peck puts a lot of work and effort and passion into what he does, and I know because he calls me almost every day. And
To tell you how good
You take my calls.
well, actually, he infuses this passion and excitement, and he certainly went on about the Hollies and how excited he was. And I watched the demo he sent, and I called him like after a half hour watching it. And I said, "This is one of the greatest films I've ever seen in terms of music." But David has a different style of making a film, and part of it is the clips that he uses and how he uses it. But there's also a craftsmanship, and there also maybe David could also address, Rob over there who has conducted the interviews, which elicits an amazing response and brings something out from the guests. I know I've done interviews before. I know how careful you have to be to really get the guests relaxed. So why don't you start with the clips, and then maybe you and Rob can talk about your style.
Sure. Well, as I mentioned earlier, whenever I think about an artist that I want to do and I go in the process, it's okay. Since all the films that I do are based on complete performances, is there enough complete performances of a band to justify it? Is enough footage of the classic songs? Because sometimes they just don't exist because the tapes weren't saved and whatnot. So in the case of the Hollies, there was a lot of great, great material. And with all of our films, as you saw here, we don't focus on the negativity, the tabloid, sex and drugs. It's obviously every band is there. I'm sure it may have been in yours. I don't know. But the point is,
Graham had never seen a naked woman until 66,
exactly.
apparently. So, or 65.
Now that's not true. That's not true. Because Graham does forget that when we were, I think we were going out as the Gaiatones once. Or it may have been the Levins. I don't know. It's just way back in history. We used to do a club in just outside of Manchester. And
Here it comes.
we were always doing these places. We were going in and doing our stuff. And this one particular night, we went to the club, and the manager said to us, "You're on after the strippers." We were both 16. That was the first time that we saw women with no clothes on. And we were there to catch the clothes as they threw them to us out of the dressing room. "Yeah, babe, another one, please." "Okay, thank you." So he lied. He lied.
I want to direct this one over to Rob.
Sorry.
No. But what I wanted to add to that is that, so many people go for, the real negative things with an artist. I mean, take Marvin Gaye, for example. If you're doing something with Marvin Gaye and you're listening to Marvin Gaye, you focus on his music. You don't focus on his death. And that really, for me, is the most important thing in the style of filmmaking. So with Rob, when he does his interviews, he does long interviews, 3-4 hour interviews, because we don't deal in sound bites. We deal with the artist talking about the songs, the craftsmanship. And I've never seen anyone really, honestly, do a better job than Rob, because a few years ago we interviewed Smokey Robinson Smokey's like, oh man, I'm doing this for an hour and I gotta go. He was there for 4 hours. And he got up and looked at Rob, he goes, it's the longest interview I ever did, but he was happy and we got so much. Same with Graham and Allan, because Rob understands the music, he's a professor of music, and because of the interviews that he does, it allows us to make a great film. And it's really important that I point out, I may be the one sitting up here tonight as the director, but there are other producers in the house, Phil Galloway and Tom Galata and Steve Scoville, who edits and pretty much co-produces with me. So I really would like all of you to give them a hand, because they're not up here now, they're back there. And it's not me by myself. It is a team effort. So anyhow, just want to make that clear.
Well, since we're talking with Rob, I'd like to maybe get that professorial point of view from a musicologist. That word comes up. About how what makes the Hollies unique, because there's a uniqueness there, but you have a point of view, and I'm sure you teach this stuff, so maybe you can tell us.
What makes the Hollies unique? That could be a 3-hour class, but
Well, you could do it too.
we'll do an edited version. It struck me watching the film, how brilliant every performance was. But Allan, especially towards the end, when he's talking about Jennifer Eccles, but also Sorry Suzanne after Graham's left, is nearly apologizing, refer to, we were sort of locked in being this pop band. And I think it's Bobby Elliott tells the story of the producer Mickey Most talking to Graham after King Midas wasn't a top 5 hit, was top 30, but it's a long way from top 5, saying, no, you've left your piece of the pie. You got to get back to being that pop band. And I suppose it's true. They were a pop band, but somehow that doesn't do them justice. We use the word pop band to talk about the Ohio Express, Tony Orlando and Don, the Monkees, the Backstreet Boys in more recent times. And the Hollies were a lot more than that. They were an extraordinary, original, creative, at times really idiosyncratic pop band in maybe the most fertile, rich decade in pop music history. You gotta think the Beatles were a pop band for much of that decade. So just thinking about the Hollies as a pop band, I don't think does enough. So what makes them so unique as a pop band? Well, those harmonies, first of all, right? That's the obvious thing. You listen to, Look Through Any Window, I Can't Let Go. They start with Allan. Allan's the first voice you hear, and he's an extraordinary lead singer. Graham's already said that. He doesn't get the recognition he should. Right. And thank God this film might help him a bit of it, being in the Hall of Fame. He's a god of rock and roll in terms of the vocalist, but...
Please, your brother.
Let me get passionate for a moment.
That was worth the $100 I gave him to say that.
He said 125, I did it with feeling. Anyway, but those songs start with Allan's voice, and then you hear Graham and Tony, and it's like the gods have opened up in terms of this harmonic spread, that's sensual, rich, and powerful. Name me another group that does that. Mamas and Papas were a great harmony group. Birds sang good harmonies. Beach Boys, great harmonies. The Beatles clearly knew something about harmonies. None of them sound like the Hollies. That's something unique and extremely special. And there's reasons for that I'm not going to go into right now, because I want to get to some other things too. Songwriting, obviously, we can talk about things from Stop, Stop, Stops, or On a Carousel, Carry On, blah, blah, blah. They're great. They're really different, each one of them. Amazing songwriting. But the instrumental prowess of the group gets overlooked a lot. I think that David did a really good job, and certainly Graham and Allan helped David do that job with things they told me about Tony and Bobby. But I think, we need to stop for a second. Allan talked about Bobby being a jazz drummer. True. But he's a jazz drummer with an unbelievable pop sensibility. Think of those opening little hooks to what? Stay, Just One Look, Here I Go Again, Yes I Will. You might not even remember them, even though you just heard them in this film at various parts. But go home, play any of those records. Every one of them starts with this little drum fill. That's a hook. That's an incredible pop. It draws you in to when the guitars come in Allan's voice. He doesn't get the recognition he should.